Good morning, and welcome to Mosaic on behalf of the Archdiocese of San Francisco. Now, where the human body and human life are concerned, our age, and by that I mean really the last 30 to 40 years, has been a time of incredible progress. Breakthroughs in the laboratory, pioneering techniques in the surgical theater, great advances in pharmacology, and interventions in the clinical setting. The layman, the non-scientist like me, can scarcely keep up with the news. You read, we've sequenced the genome. We have CRISPR technology. I'm not sure that I know what that means. And yesterday I read something about uterine transplants. Now, people like me content themselves with saying things like, we have medical miracles. But in fact, these are not miracles. They're techniques. They're applications of new knowledge. In many cases, trials and experiments. And if you have a technique, you're going to have some costs and you're going to have some consequences, and there will be benefits as well. I want to understand those things, and I've invited here today a guest who can tell us all about them. We talked with Jennifer Lal. She's a medical professional. She's the founder of a local institution that has become an internationally known study for the Center of Bioethics. So thank you for joining us, and come back in a moment. We'll talk with Jennifer Lal about bioethics. Hello and welcome to Mosaic. Our guest today is Jennifer Lal. Let me introduce her. Now, Jennifer, your face may already be familiar to viewers of television shows. I read that you are frequently interviewed on television and radio, ABC, CBS, PBS, NPR. You were a medical professional by original training, right? Now you are the president of a Center for the Study of Bioethics, which is based in Pleasant Hill, California. Yeah, so you resident the East Bay. So are you a local girl? Did you grow up here, or how'd you get to California?
Oh, I've been here since high school, so I consider myself a local girl. I married a third-generation San Franciscan. So,
wonderful. Okay.
But yeah, I am a nurse by training.
Yes.
And I was a pediatric critical care nurse. Actually, my first job in pediatric critical care nursing was here in San Francisco at UC San Francisco. Uh-huh. So I did practice nursing for almost 20 years before founding the Center for Bioethics and Culture, which, and I believe, as you say, is in the East Bay.
Yeah, in the East Bay. 20 years ago, you founded Center for Ethics and Bioethics and Culture.
I can't believe it, but yeah, it's been 20 years. Time flies.
Definitely. And now, what caused you to take that step?
Yeah, well, I love medicine and science and technology, and certainly working in pediatric critical care, nursing at major university hospitals. We were always on the cutting edge of a new technology, a new treatment, a new therapy, but I was also interested in just the ethics of all of the advancements. You know, not just because we can do something doesn't always mean we should do something. So I went back to graduate school and studied bioethics.
All right, I noticed you had an advanced degree, master's, okay.
Yeah, and it was part of my graduate work that founded the center that I now run.
So the center is an educational nonprofit, 501c3 in California. I mentioned it's internationally known, and this is the fact. You've testified at the UN, you've spoken in foreign countries. People are interested in the knowledge you have.
Yeah, well, obviously these issues aren't just unique to the United States, because we have sick people all around the world, or people that are interfacing with the medical profession. Yeah. I get around.
So, okay. The bioethics and culture. And let me say, this is a Catholic show. You are not a Catholic, I understand.
Correct.
All right. Lutheran, or may I ask about that?
Yeah, I'm Lutheran, and I work very closely with many of my good Catholic friends on areas where we agree.
Wonderful. Yeah. So then tell us what the Center for Bioethics does, major work that it does.
Well, we're heavily involved in an area where we kind of put it under the heading of making life. So you mentioned CRISPR technology and gene editing and cloning and assisted reproduction, all the new novel ways that biotechnology allows us now to make human life. You mentioned, in your opening, uterine wombs and womb transplants and artificial wombs. So we're heavily involved in that space, and so we write and we do media and we produce documentary films, all to help educate people. And one of our important elements is that we want the public to be involved in these conversations, because we all have a voice and we all have something at stake.
So your audience, how do you reach out? Do you reach out to younger people? Do you have seminars? Do you have broadcasts? You make movies. I've seen a couple of these. Where are these released?
All of our films are available on Amazon.
All right.
So people that want to go to the center's website can find all of our films and watch them on Amazon. We do have a podcast, Venus Rising, where we talk about all things related to women's reproductive health.
Okay.
I am interested as a woman in women's reproductive health, and certainly as a nurse. And we, yes, we reached out to young people, so we're very involved in social media, which is where a lot of young people spend their time, on Twitter and Facebook. But all the time, just sort of disseminating information and educating people. We have a weekly email newsletter that just tries to make these more sciencey, technological issues accessible to lay people who don't have degrees in science or medicine.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I'm interested in these things. I don't have a personal stake in any of them, but I'd like to know more. And you have, I noticed on your website, you have information sheets, fact sheets you call them, I think.
Yeah.
3 things you should know about X, Y, Z.
Yeah, and we have quite a few. Our filmmaking has been, some of our films have been on the issue of egg donation. Young women, mostly on university campuses, seeing ads to donate their eggs to help somebody. So we have a fact sheet, 3 things you should know about egg donation, which sort of break down some of the risks, some of the realities of making that decision. We want people to be informed, when they make decisions. We have one on surrogacy.
Yes.
I'm really involved in the global debates around commercial surrogacy. So we have 3 things you should know about surrogacy.
And these are all available on your website?
Yeah, they're just PDFs, free for information.
Now, I mentioned in my opening that, these are techniques, and techniques always have benefits perhaps, but they have costs and consequences. You try to inform people about both sides of that?
Sure, we absolutely do. I mean, we're not anti-technology. I mean, I took a car to come here today and was answering emails on my smartphone. But we also know that, with even a car, there's risks.
Yeah.
And so we want people to be informed. There's risks to young women's health that might make the decision to sell or donate their eggs or to be a surrogate for somebody else. So we want people to have all the information so that they can make an informed decision.
And I have no idea what the extent of that industry, if we can call it, the egg donation industry is. How many young women are involved?
Well, we don't really track. That's one of the realities of this practice in the world, really. And it's a multi-billion-dollar a year industry. The whole area of fertility medicine, I would put it under that umbrella. So it's a very, very large industry, but it's new. And so we don't really have good figures and good data and numbers and tracking of how many people are doing this.
Okay, but yet it's known, you say, that there are consequences or difficulties or risks involved for the person donating the eggs.
Sure,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, these are healthy young women who are taking medicine. Usually you take medicine because you're sick.
Yeah.
And you weigh the risk-benefit.
Sure.
Sick, so I'm going to take this medicine that I know has risks, has side effects, but I need to get well.
Okay.
And there's risk to certainly healthy women who take medicine.
We'll talk more about this later. We're going to take a brief break now. We'll come back for another section with Jennifer Lau. Hello and welcome back. We're talking with Jennifer Lau, RN, MA, founder and president of the Center for Bioethics and Culture in Pleasant Hill. Now, Jennifer, we were talking about risks of modern, brand new interventions and techniques. One, which you've studied, is egg donation, and another is surrogacy. Now, I think the theme that I hear in what you're saying is there are risks to the women involved. And you have education to offer us about these things, so.
Yeah, well, one is I encourage anybody who's listening to watch our films. I mean, they're great documentary films where we actually talk with young women who have done this and sort of walk through their experiences and what went wrong.
And let's just say these are readily available on your website.
Yep.
We'll run a slide later that gives your domain name and URL and all that. But yes, all these resources we're talking about, whether they're video or print or other, are on your website, yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right.
But if you think of like the young healthy egg donor who sees an ad perhaps in her school newspaper, my daughters went to UC Berkeley.
Or by the way, yes, the school newspaper also in New York or a big city like that on the subway.
Yeah.
Papered with these, yeah.
Yeah, so they'll see these ads and they'll think, oh, I could help somebody, and oh boy, that money would really help me a lot.
That money would help pay my college tuition. Or,
Yeah, but what happens, not always, but often is the case, they take these powerful fertility drugs and undergo a surgical procedure in order to harvest a bunch of eggs that will be sold. And there's serious short and long-term consequences to doing that. And similarly, in the case of surrogacy, most people don't realize that a surrogate pregnancy has above and beyond the natural risks of a spontaneous pregnancy. And in fact, just in California a few weeks ago, last month, we had a surrogate mother in San Diego who died. So it's comes with risk. So in our films, we sort of tell the story of women who saw these advertisements and thought that this was a great way to help somebody. They were sympathetic to somebody who couldn't have children, who wanted to have children. Yeah. And they also thought that the financial incentive would be beneficial.
Okay. Let me ask this: what is what's the great interest in surrogacy? It seems to me aren't there adoptable children that are already born and going wanting and need homes?
Yeah, the argument that I hear often for people who are interested in advancing surrogacy will say that this allows people to have a genetic child, a biologically related child. Yeah. Whereas when you adopt, you're not biologically related to the child. But in the case of the surrogate, she might be carrying your own genetic child for you and your wife, or you and your husband. So that's sort of the argument, which I think is sort of unfortunate that we don't, because we do know that there's many children clearly in San Francisco in the foster care system that could benefit from a home.
Yeah. And we do see news stories about these, even if you're not a professional in the field, and you learn that there's contract difficulties and there's legal difficulties that haven't been solved about these matters.
Yeah, and there's economic disparities. I will say you'll see a People magazine cover with celebrities that are having a baby through surrogacy, but you don't see a similar magazine that shows a celebrity being a surrogate for a low-income or impoverished woman. So it sort of cuts around the economic. And that's how I'm able to build really broad coalitions in my work and bring together many different voices to help educate people on all angles of the story.
I know that you do have a large cohort of medical professionals, academicians, intellectuals. We'll talk about that in detail a little later. Yeah. But let me ask you this now, because this is of interest. Your film called Eggsploitation, a pretty good pun, is a big hit. I mean, it's been watched, I don't know, is it millions of times?
Yeah, well, I wish I could keep track. The problem is once somebody buys it, you don't know if they showed it to 500 people or they watched it by themselves at home. But yeah, it's been sold into over 30 countries. It's been translated into 4 or 5 different languages. It won Best Documentary in the California Independent Film Festival. Oh, okay. So it's won, some major film awards and been recognized. So it is an important film that just keeps being watched and shown and purchased from people all around the world.
And it's probably an important tool for young women to get hold of it. The target audience for the egg donation harvesters, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on university campuses all the time screening the film, and young women all the time will come up and say, thank you so much for your work. I get these ads all the time on my Facebook page. I see them in the campus newspapers. So, they're grateful for the information.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you then a little bit about, you have these educational tools for the layman, the common person,
Right.
Easily available, readily accessible, and pretty nifty. I mean, I've looked at some of these myself. But then you also have an intellectual side to your institute.
Right.
And this is called the Paul Ramsey
Institute.
Okay. You are the Center for Bioethics and Culture, and you also have the Paul Ramsey Institute. Now, as I understand, it's an institute studying bioethics and named for Paul Ramsey. And tell me a little about Paul Ramsey.
Yeah, well, I had to read a lot of Paul Ramsey's writings when I was in graduate school, and he's the late, great Paul Ramsey of Princeton. He had an endowed position there in the ethics department, and he really was sort of on the forefront of looking at the shift from medical ethics to bioethics.
Okay.
And so we have this institute, which is a 2-year fellowship program where young men and women from literally all around the world are applying for a coveted spot. We're only able to accept a few. You know, one of our first Paul Ramsey fellows was Paul Kalanithi, who wrote the very famous book, When Breath Becomes Air. He was a neurosurgeon at Stanford when he was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer.
Wow.
So just to sort of give you an insight of some of the caliber of people that are attracted to this 2-year fellowship, where they study with Dr. Aaron Kheriaty at UC Irvine, who's a psychiatrist, Dr. Bill Hurlbut at Stanford, a medical doctor, Gilbert Meilander, who's emeritus professor of ethics.
Great. That's great to know. Now we'll take a brief break. We'll come back soon and talk for one final segment with Jennifer Lau. Hello and welcome back. We're talking with Jennifer Lau. Now, Jennifer, you mentioned, and I don't know how to say his name, Paul Kalanithi? Mm-hmm. Okay, because that's a book that I read. It was a bestseller.
Yeah.
He was a neurosurgeon at Stanford, young man, married man, got stage 4 cancer suddenly, and during his last few months of life, got treatments which were unsuccessful, wrote a wonderful book, best-selling book. Everyone read it a couple of years ago. And how is he associated with your work?
Paul was one of our first Paul Ramsey Institute fellows. So our institute runs a 2-year fellowship where young men and women from many disciplines, you know, law students, medical students, PhD students will apply. And Paul was in the first group when we launched the Paul Ramsey Institute. And it was during his 2-year time with us that he was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer.
Okay.
And was writing When Breath Becomes Air.
A wonderful book, truly.
Yeah.
Truly moving. So I'm curious, you have top-notch academics, medical professionals, and so on from throughout the country who apply for a limited number of spots in the institute. Then they're there for a year, 2 years?
2 years.
And is there a physical location for your institute?
Well, we have the meetings in the San Francisco Bay Area because our fellows are either students, you know, in MD programs, PhD programs, law programs. So they come to San Francisco for a very long weekend. We have scheduled readings, and they wrestle and think with our scholars. And so over a period of 2 years, we bring them to the Bay Area.
And the training is in bioethics, which some of them haven't encountered before. I mean, a doctor who knows how to do everything to the human body may not know his bioethics yet, and you train.
And the same with a law student.
Sure.
You know, doesn't really understand the legality of some of these issues.
Sure.
Gene editing, CRISPR. I mean, the law will have to weigh in if we can do this or not do this.
Yeah.
You know, there's PhD students who are going on to, hopefully teach in universities. They're going to be teaching students.
Yeah.
So it's part of their formation. And they love it because it is multidisciplinary and cross-discipline. So law students are benefiting from hearing from, medical students who are benefiting from hearing from PhD students, and really good, lively discussions, serious thinking.
And these professionals will take the learning back to their professional milieu and distribute it as well.
Exactly. And then we're also creating a network.
Yeah.
So we have a strong alumni program. And every year we have the Paul Ramsey dinner, and all the alumni are invited to come to that event. And so we're creating sort of a network of like-minded individuals in different areas of professional work.
Now, I looked on your website. You're having your annual dinner in honor of Paul Ramsey. You give the Paul Ramsey Award. And that's April 4th, right?
April 4th in Diablo, California.
Yeah, okay.
Every year we we recognize one person for their exemplary work in the field of bioethics. This year, the award is going to Professor Helen Alvarez, who's a law professor at George Mason University.
Okay.
So she'll be on hand to receive the Paul Ramsey Prize. All of our fellows will be there. Our Paul Ramsey Institute scholars will be there. It's quite a gala event. It's a great way for people to come and learn about the work of the Center for Bioethics and Culture and the Paul Ramsey Institute as well, and just to get to meet some really cool young men and women that are going to go out and change the world.
That's wonderful. So it's a dinner, and public is invited.
Yes.
Okay. And they can find your website, and they can register and get a table, get a ticket.
Yeah.
April 4th, Diablo Valley Country Club. We'd like to run a slide right now, just briefly. We have one slide which will show how you can get in touch. Now, CBC up there, that nice logo, Center for Bioethics and Culture, and that's your website. There it is. You can take it. Now, I've put below this, some colleagues or counterparts of yours. What is that I've stuck in there below
The
yours?
National Catholic Bioethics Center.
National Catholic
Which I believe
Bioethics
is
Center.
in Philadelphia.
I thought Washington, but
maybe they moved.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And that's another center like yours on the other coast, Catholic in description and
Yeah.
Catholic in teaching, but doing the same kind of work.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So I want to encourage people to support your work, to go to the dinner, if that makes sense. And I'd like you to tell us, how do I put it? How much is there to learn? Should we go to your website every single day and see another movie and learn another thing?
Well, I don't know about that, but I do think just getting on the email mailing list is good because we send out one newsletter a week. It's like I said, it's written for lay people. So if anybody thinks, well, I'm not a doctor or a scientist, I can't understand this, it's targeted to the lay person. Lets people know what's going on, activities that are coming up. So we do have a really great study guide too. That's a free PDF online that goes with all of our films. So if people wanted to show a film, organize a discussion in their own parish or
that's what I was thinking.
Classroom.
If you're a parish director of religious education or a parish events manager, or if you want to set up, can you send a speaker to the?
Yeah, we have a speaker form online, so people can say, "I'm having an event. I'm looking for somebody to come and give a talk on."
Yeah.
Whatever the topic is.
Wonderful.
So yeah, there's.
And they can come and show your film and so on? Okay.
Yeah, and they can make an appointment to come visit us in our office if they want to come see us in Pleasant Hill. And
do you have any connection with, say, the local Catholic school districts? Are they customers?
Well, I have spoken at several of the Catholic schools in the Bay Area, high schools and beyond. I've spoken at the Catholic Bishops Conference in Dallas at the invitation of the National Catholic Bioethics Center once.
That's right, and you're well acquainted with Archbishop Salvatore.
I am.
Wonderful.
Yeah, he's a wonderful man.
Well, Jennifer, thank you for joining us, and thank you for
you.
sharing a little bit. I do want to encourage people to go to your website, find out what they need to do, and get on your mailing list, and perhaps attend this wonderful dinner and hear a talk by Helen Alvarez of George Mason University.
Yeah, wonderful.
Wonderful. Thanks very much for joining us on Mosaic, and we'll see you next time.